Hello, this is Healing from the Ground Up. I'm Eric Greenleaf, and I'm hosting a series of interesting conversations with exceptional people. Today my guest is Robert Rosenbaum, a clinical neuropsychologist and Zen practitioner and member of the Wenwu School. And we're going to talk about healing the spirit. And of course, everybody in America probably knows something about the talking cures that both of us have practiced as psychologists, and knows correspondingly very little about the non-talking cures resting on notions of energy, movement, posture and position, touch, and so on. So, although it's difficult to put into words, is there a way you can talk about injuries to or doubts in or illnesses of the spirit and ways to approach it alongside or beyond words?
No.
Well then.
However, in Zen at least, we talk about making a mistake on purpose.
Oh, indeed.
And whenever we put things into words, since words are what we have to work with, we make a mistake on purpose, and that's okay. I actually think that psychotherapy is a mistake made on purpose. Because usually, when people pick up the phone to make an appointment for psychotherapy, whatever it is that needs healing has already started. And this actually brings me back to the kind of basic foundation of the question. I saw the sign for the program which said Healing the Spirit, and my first thought was, the spirit doesn't need to be healed. The problem is that we lose track of the spirit, which is inherently healthy. And then we keep looking all around for it, but we're often looking in the wrong place. There is, I would say my motto or guideline in this regard is a rather famous Zen koan. And people think of Zen koans as, oh, what's the sound of one hand clapping and other esoteric kinds of things. And there are some like that, but this one's a little more accessible. So would it be okay if I just mention it here?
Yes.
Okay. So it's called Dongshan is Unwell. Dongshan was a famous Zen teacher, and he became sick. And so one of his students came to him a little later and said, "Oh, teacher, you've been ill." And Dongshan said, "Yes." And the student said, "Is there anybody who doesn't get ill?" And mind you, this is in a Buddhist context, and Buddha taught the things you can't escape in life are old age, illness, death, pain. So that's what all Buddhism is about. So when the student says, "Is there anyone who doesn't get ill?" the prescribed response is no. But Dongshan said, "Yes, there's someone who does not get ill." And the student was a little surprised, and he said, "Oh, well then, does the one who does not get ill take care of you?" And Dongshan said, "I have the opportunity to take care of him." And this confused the student. And the student said, I don't understand. You've been sick, but you're taking care of the one who doesn't get sick? I mean, what happens when you take care of the one who doesn't get sick? And Dongshan said, then I don't see that there's any illness whatsoever. The spirit which animates us is beyond health and sickness. I mean, health and sickness are two sides of the same coin. It's part of the great cycle that we all latch onto a little piece of, And as we're turning around and being tumbled about, we forget the larger picture. But that spirit which animates us to help one another, animates us to cry if we're in pain or sad, animates us to hug a child when the child smiles or cries. It's just natural. You don't have to work very hard to find it if you just stop confusing yourself. And the problem is, especially in current society, we're so darn busy producing things and acquiring things and doing things
And explaining things.
that we lose sight of something very simple.
I know that you wrote a book about the uses of Zen called Zen in the Heart of Psychotherapy. And would you have, for example, when you were working with a psychiatric patient, told the same parable or koan story or similar stories to unbalance their very set expectations and ideas about sickness and health?
Well, very occasionally with a person who had an interest in this area, I might tell a story like that. But the story is one step removed from the person's immediate experience.
Yeah.
And so it's more important to relate to the person and see their healthy spirit. So it's not a matter of technique and a specific thing you do or a specific story one can tell. I made it my practice before I saw clients, whether they were neurological patients or psychotherapy clients, they would go into the room ahead of me, and while I was out of sight from them, I would make a little bow to them, and I'd pause, and then I'd ask myself a very important question, which was, how can I enjoy myself during this next period of time with this person? With some people it's harder than with others.
Yes.
That's true. But to the extent that you can enjoy being with someone, your enjoyment kindles something in them. And most people like being enjoyed.
Yes.
They go, I'm enjoyable. How nice. And something comes alive. And again, it's very natural. It's like a child brings you their drawing, and maybe it's a scribble or whatever, and you go, oh, look at that. You don't say, what is it? You just say, wow, look at that. And this meeting a client and saying, wow, look at you, is actually pretty amazing and wondrous. And to the extent that you can unlock some sense of wonder in yourself and in the other person, because it answers, it's already complete. Something is happening that you don't have to worry about a whole lot.
I've had that same view as you, Bob, that what works so seamlessly with kids, which is play, appreciation, safety, warmth, and enough freedom to move around and maneuver things, has to work well with adults too.
Sure.
And that the enterprises of psychotherapy or spiritual help or counseling or communication can't be solemn affairs.
Absolutely.
Even at
Absolutely.
funerals, people tell funny stories about the deceased and eat together and cry together and laugh together.
Yeah.
And you seem in your remarks to be pointing toward the naturalness of human life as a healing
Exactly.
means as well.
Yeah, it's basically just being human.
Yeah.
Just being alive, which I had an aunt who, when I was young, used to take me to the circus.
Lucky you.
Yes, I was very lucky. I still remember those little red things that you twirl around and they'd make kind of circles. You know?
Very good thing.
Yeah, they were
wish
great.
I had some.
Yes, yes. Well, when she died, she had something written on her tombstone. Now, my aunt had been a travel agent back at the time when we had travel agents rather than the internet. And she would always book these tours, and they were all-inclusive tours. You know, they were package tours where you paid a set sum, which meant you were in London for a certain number of nights, and then in Paris, and your meals were included. And people would always be calling her up and saying, okay, I want to do this, but I want to get a discount because when I'm in Paris, I want to do such and such, and she'd have to say, no, it's one thing, you know, and people would hassle her, but that's how it was. Well, when she died, what she has on her tombstone, and if you go to the graveyard, you can see it, it says, life is a package deal.
Life is a package deal.
It's a package deal, and we don't always get to choose what's in it. But, you know, thinking of kids, you buy a toy for a kid, what they play with is the box.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the package which is the great thing. And we tend to forget that when we have a cold or we have a stroke or we get very, very worried about something or depressed. It's all part of the package. And to the extent that we can experience some of that bigger container, we sometimes talk about the ABC of spirit, a bigger container.
So bigger and better packaging of the life that's there anyway, no?
Well, of the life that's there anyway. I had a brief reaction to bigger and better because our, you've picked up on it, because our society is kind of addicted to bigger and better. And I wondered sometimes, what would happen if a commercial came on and said, really just exactly as it's always been and it's good enough.
Which is, of course, what we look back to nostalgically. It's
That's
that
right.
little red thing from the circus, perfect in itself.
That's right.
That you can't improve it.
That's right.
Bigger one would not be better. A better one would not be better.
That's right.
And I think that's very precise. Again, looking at one's own experience as Buddhists recommend, rather than some standard outside.
Yeah.
You can see right away what worked when you were younger, what worked when you're mature, what works with your own families, and so on.
Right, and it's something of a mystery in terms of what works, which is why I like it.
Yeah.
You really can't know when something is going to just click. I mean, I think most of us have had an experience where we're feeling awful and, you know, the car breaks down, so we take the bus, and then the bus breaks down, and so then we start walking to work, and then it starts raining on us, and we haven't brought an umbrella, and we walk in the door, and a pebble hits the glass, and the glass just shatters, and you go into your office, and you start to sharpen a pencil, and the pencil breaks, and you look at it, and you just start laughing. You know how it can be awful, 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 and then one little thing happens, and suddenly it's
too awful.
It's too much, and you just start laughing. I mean, that's mysterious, but it's, talk about healing.
Yeah.
Your whole day changes in a moment.
That's true. And instead of the story, the true story being it was awful, followed by awful, followed by worse, the whole thing collapses.
It collapses.
The story of it collapses.
Actually, since we're talking about healing the spirit, and as we're talking, I'm remembering an experience I had doing Qigong. Mm-hmm. Now, Qigong's a generic term. It means practice of qi or energy, and being trained as a scientific clinical neuropsychologist, I didn't believe in such things, but I had back problems for about 5 years. So our friend, John Dykman, suggested, well, why don't you give this a try? And I tried it, and it helped. And I got interested in it, and eventually, after a year or two, I decided to be trained as a teacher. So one night, I really didn't want to go to class. I'd had a bad day. And I thought, well, okay, the class is going to be a lecture tonight, so I won't have to do anything. So I went to the class, and instead of it being a lecture, it was a practice night where we'd have to do the same movement over and over again until our teacher felt we had it right. And guess who got chosen that night to be the demonstration student? It was me.
The guy who didn't want to
go. The guy who did not want to go, and
go.
so I got up there and I did the movement and it was wrong. And I did it again and it was wrong. And my teacher very sweetly worked with me. This went on for about an hour and a half, and each time it was not right. And all the other students went home, not right. And my teacher worked with me another 15, 20 minutes, and she finally said, okay, enough. And I, as is tradition, I said, thank you very much, while I was thinking, oh, thank heavens, I'm out of here. I felt awful, this is awful, what frustration. I walked out the door, I walked about 10 paces, and suddenly I was filled with such a feeling of well-being and vibrancy that I literally stopped walking, and I stopped and I said, this is what health feels like. Oh. And I've never in my life known before what it likes to feel truly healthy. Every cell just alive. And it came out of the blue.
Or out of those repeated gentle motions. Is that a fair kind of thing to say?
Well, yes, doing the motions themselves, and that the practice moves the energy and moves you through blockages. And its basic idea is if you remove blockages, things flow naturally. It's just like a stream. If you take the clutter out of the stream, it flows.
And if I hear you right, Bob, you didn't know about, let's say, the blockages, their placement, the sort of science or analog of science.
Nope.
What you did know was when you felt healthy.
Exactly.
And then to say the blockages had been removed by what you had done. What did the teacher, what was her part in this, would you say?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question. Shermu, our teacher, very generous woman, very unpretentious.
Yeah.
And she would not say, well, I did something to him. But her generosity in just staying there and staying after class and just working with me transmitted something. And it was just natural that she was concerned for me. She wanted me to experience something clicking. And she didn't see it work. I mean, when I left there, it didn't look good.
It looked the same, and you were glad to be out of there.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the whole basis of that practice is coming back to what's natural. So sometimes her English is not the greatest, and she'll try to explain just how to do a movement, and then she goes, just natural. And all the students are going, oh, what's just natural? How do you do it? And then at a certain point, you're doing it, and suddenly it goes, oh, right. Why?
And that's what happened to you.
Right.
You said, oh, right, that's healthy movement, because the whole body is always moving inside, even if you or I were still at this table.
The whole body's moving, mind is moving. There's another Zen koan where, two monks are standing there watching a flag on a flagpole, and it's blowing in the wind, and one of them says, the flag is moving. The other one goes, no, the wind is moving. The teacher comes along and goes, your minds are moving. Our minds are always moving, but they're always still at the same time. We have a problem. It's related to our losing track of spirit. We think it's something special or separate, because we think if this, then not that. If you're alive, you're not dead. If you're here, you're not there.
Or if it's corporeal, it's not spiritual,
That's
kind
right.
of thing.
Or if you're ill, you're not healthy.
Uh-huh.
Well, actually, as parenthetically, let me tell you, if you were ill and every part of you were ill, you'd be dead. I mean, very quickly. Usually, I'm just getting over a little bit of a cold, so my lungs were a little congested, my throat was a little sore. Thankfully, my muscles were doing okay. My feet were working. I could cook and eat and digest food. And yes, your whole body's involved and feels something, but you're always more healthy than you're aware of, or you wouldn't be alive. I mean, that's just a fact. So in terms of moving and stillness, it's hard to talk about this without making it sound mystical, but movement depends on stillness. Stillness depends on movement.
Or as Willie Nelson said, still is still moving to me.
That's right. That's very good. That's very good.
And I guess you'd say movement is still stillness to you.
Right. Right. So
that these antinomies or opposites are obfuscating. They get in the way of some kind of something, some clear understanding or some sense of hope.
Right.
That even though, let's say I have a frog in my throat, my limbs are working well, my mind is unclouded, I'm enjoying our conversation, and so on.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So there's more life than otherwise, as well as all the otherwise.
There's more life than otherwise. Harry Stack Sullivan used to say we are all more human than otherwise.
A favorite of mine,
yes,
too.
Mine too.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you...
But can I
yes,
another
please.
thing about
Sure.
natural?
Yeah.
Because this is a kind of bee in my bonnet. I really like going out hiking in the mountains. And one of the things which strikes me when I come back to the city is how constructed it is. I mean, we walk on concrete and asphalt. It's pretty rare for us these days to walk barefoot on the soil.
Yeah.
Now, the soil is a hodgepodge of everything. If you say, well, is soil dirty or clean? From a natural standpoint, that's a meaningless question.
Yeah.
Some things will grow in it, some things won't. It's just the earth. By not letting ourselves experience natural rhythms, sleep, resting when you're resting, doing something when you've got energy. I mean, what a concept, rather than, okay, it's 8 p.m., so we're going to start working now, and your energy better be right for the next 8 hours, or else, we're going to dock your pay. That's profoundly unnatural. It's not how biological systems work. And I think we're paying the penalty when we try to make our minds and bodies work according to a schedule rather than according to what they're telling us they need.
And I think I'd want to add to your description who we need, because I was so struck by your story of health that it was Shamu and her support, caring, persistence, generosity, as you said, that you cite as a source of your health.
Absolutely.
And I almost expected you would talk about how the teacher holds the energy or the forms of it, but it was the human connection that you point to. So I'm thinking along with you that we're lonely, we're missing the small group of humans that have always made life what it is.
Right.
You know, the Sangha in Zen terms.
That's right.
Or Buddha and his pals, that kind of stuff. And time to talk.
Yeah, and actually, just as you're mentioning this now, I'm thinking, so you get really sick, and where do you go? To a hospital, where you're surrounded by sick people and technology. Whereas in the past, if you got sick, you were surrounded by people who cared about you.
And who knew you your whole life long.
That's right, and knew, if when my kids were a little younger and still living at home, they knew that if I were feeling down or sick, if they made me homemade pasta,
you got better.
I got better. It was better than any antibiotic.
That's right.
Or anything else.
Bob, I wish we could go on talking, but thank you so much for coming here. And thank you all for watching, and join us again on our series of interesting conversations, Healing from the Ground Up. We hope to see you next time.
Thanks very much.
Yeah,
Thanks
you.
for having me.
That was fun.
That was fun. I was going to talk about how the time I